Hi there, I'm Brother Merrill, and this is Sunshine for the Soul Inspirational Stories. I appreciate you watching. I've got some great stories today. I want to thank Ron Argyle and some of the listeners who sent me stories about the pioneers. As we get ready to celebrate Pioneer Day this week, I thought it would be appropriate to speak of some of the sacrifices and efforts and sanctification that went into making this desert blossom as a rose. Before I start, I'd like to encourage anyone who has an inspirational story they'd like to share to please send them to me. I've gotten several wonderful experiences from individuals that I'll share in the next week or two, and I thank you for sending them. You can find my email on the screen now and also in the comments section. I also want to speak of Cardio Miracle. I drink my Cardio Miracle regularly. I've stopped drinking caffeine. I know that might disappoint some of you, but I had a little Mountain Dew habit that I've had since I was a kid. I've quit. I don't feel the need for it. The energy I get from Cardio Miracle is wonderful. It's made my neural pathways more lively. I can recall things that I used to forget. I'd wander into a room and think, why did I come in here? And now I don't seem to have that experience. My grandkids were in town last week, and usually by the time they're gone, I just stay in bed for a couple of days and recuperate. We took them camping. I did all the camp work for all the girls that were with me, and we had a blast. But when they left, I still had energy, and my wife did too. So I would encourage all of you that haven't tried it to try Cardio Miracle. And as a little added incentive, we've gotten 50 more t-shirts. And so if you're one of the first 50 people to order Cardio Miracle, I will send you a free God Loves You, Ask Him t-shirt. Here's a couple of the listeners wearing their t-shirts, and I thank them for sending me these pictures. This week I was privileged to travel to Manti, Utah, and attend the temple there. I was struck with the intricate beauty and detail of this jewel, representing the pioneers' work and sacrifice. The benches were made from rough-hewn timbers that had been refined into functional, finished shapes, and then meticulously adorned with highlights. The intricate shaping and finishing of each post and beam and arch was adorned with rosettes and plinths and other adornments, all shaped and finished without power tools. It was awe-inspiring. The artwork of both the hundreds of paintings throughout the building and the murals on the walls were amazing to look at. I loved them. I had to remind myself to focus on the endowment ceremony I was receiving for one of my ancestors. But the overwhelming pioneer sacrifice represented in every aspect and detail of this beautiful temple was inspiring. After our session, a shift coordinator graciously let us view the famous spiral staircase and gaze into the ceiling rooms and offices, beautiful antique fireplaces. Then we spent a lot of time enjoying the focal point of dozens of works of art, each framed in their own work of art. I love antique picture frames. It was inspiring to feel the love and sacrifice represented in the Manti Temple at every turn. I was reverenced to ponder the consecration represented by every detail. This temple was dedicated in 1888. Every stone, piece of wood, or piece of art was refined by hand from its natural condition to represent an offering to the Lord by these pioneers. As we got back into our air-conditioned vehicle and traveled the 80 miles back to Provo in just over an hour, I realized it would have taken a horse and buggy 2 days to make the same journey, while the occupants rode on a buckboard. As we prepare to celebrate the 24th of July, I wanted to share some stories that represent the vision, heavenly direction, faith, and sacrifice of those involved with making this desert blossom as a rose. Where did it all begin? Wilford Woodruff reports on Sunday night, April 26, 1834, the prophet Joseph called all of us who held the priesthood to gather into a little log schoolhouse. It was a small house, perhaps 14 feet squared, and that night it held the whole of the priesthood of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who were then in Kirtland. That was the first time I ever saw Oliver Cowdery, or Brigham Young, Heber C. Kimball, the two Pratt brothers, Orson Hyde, and many others. There were no apostles in the church except Joseph and Oliver at this time. The prophet called upon the elders of Israel with him there to bear their testimony of this work. Those that I have named bore their testimonies. When they got through, the prophet said, "Brethren, I have been very much edified and instructed in your testimonies here tonight. But I want to say to you before the Lord that you know no more concerning the destinies of this church and kingdom than a babe upon its mother's lap. You don't comprehend it. It's only a little handful of priesthood you see here tonight, but this church will fill North and South America. It will fill the world. It will fill the Rocky Mountains. There will be tens of thousands of Latter-day Saints who will be gathered in the Rocky Mountains, and there they will open the door for establishing the gospel among the Lamanites, who will then receive the gospel and their endowments and the blessings of God. This people will go into the Rocky Mountains. They will there build temples to the Most High. They will raise up posterity there, and the Latter-day Saints who dwell in these mountains will stand in the flesh until the coming of the Son of Man. The Son of Man will come to them while in the Rocky Mountains." Just before he was killed, Joseph Smith made a sketch or map of the future home of the saints in the Rocky Mountains and their route to that country as he had seen in a vision. Levi W. Hancock drew a copy of that map. There were 4 copies of the map made, one which Brigham Young kept, and another that was carried by the Mormon Battalion, by which they knew where to find the saints in the Salt Lake Valley after they were disbanded in San Diego. Keep in mind, this map was a copy of a sketch Joseph had drawn from his vision of this unknown land. After the death of Joseph Smith, when it seemed as if every trouble and calamity had come upon the saints, Brigham Young sought the Lord to know what they should do and where they should lead this people for safety. Church leaders obtained and studied information from the explorer John C. Fremont and other experts on their target area in the Rockies. But this was limited information and was insufficient to quiet Brigham Young's worry and concern about how he would find and know the exact location Joseph had seen in a vision. How could he find an unknown spot over 1,200 miles away through a virtually unknown wilderness and desert? Elder George A. Smith later reported that Brigham fasted and prayed in the Nauvoo Temple daily until he received a vision in which the prophet Joseph, pointing out a specific mountaintop with an ensign or flag flying above it, decreed, "Build under the point where the colors fall, and you will prosper and have peace." Others had also received divine guidance concerning their journey. Amasa Lyman preached to a gathering of saints in the Bowery on Temple Square and recalled a vision he had in 1845 in Nauvoo. He said, "When we were in Nauvoo at the beginning of the last winter we spent in Illinois, the threatenings of our enemies had intensified, wherein they stated that we were to be driven away. At that same time, I was confined to my bed with sickness, and I could not come out to see what the issues would be. To get away was impossible at the time for me, and we realized that the longer we stayed, the more we should be oppressed by our enemies." After I had commenced to recover my health one morning, while lying in my bed in open day, as wide awake as I am at this moment, the surrounding objects suddenly disappeared. And instead of lying in my bed, I suddenly found myself standing in a vacant lot in front of the printing office of Nauvoo. As I stood there, I heard a rumbling noise, something like that which attends the moving of an enormous mass of people. I turned round to look in the direction of Main Street, and behold, the whole country was filled with a huge, moving mass of people that seemed to be traveling directly toward the point where I stood. As they came closer, I realized they were not traveling on the ground, but were walking in the air near the height of the rooftops. At the head of the company were three personages clothed with robes of white, something like those of which many of us are acquainted with. Around their waist was a girdle of gold, and from this was suspended a scabbard of a sword. Each of these leaders held a sword in their hand. They were all moving forward, facing directly west. The company stopped for a moment, and the individual leading them turned and looked over his shoulder toward me with a smile of recognition. It was Joseph Smith. The other two leaders were his brothers, Hiram and Carlos. After contemplating this scene a few moments, I suddenly found myself again in my bed just as I was before, and the vision had closed. This was my assurance in the commencement of our troubles in Illinois, which I received assuring me of the guardianship that was around each of us and the protection that we were receiving from the hosts of heaven. As we prepare to celebrate Pioneer Day, or Pioneer Day, as the Utah Gentiles refer to it, I would like to share the stories of how everyday men and women who had the blood of Israel flowing through their veins were separated, converted, and gathered to join the saints in the Rocky Mountains. They may not have seen their true leader, but as sure as Amasa Lyman saw Joseph, Hiram, and Carlos Smith at the head of that huge migration of spiritual beings, each individual was gathered and led by heaven to help them turn the desert into a rose. Hans Ulrich Breiner was born in Zurich, Switzerland. When Ulrich was nearly 16, he became very ill. While he lay in bed, sick, he had a vivid dream. A man with a gray beard and peculiar eyes took him by the hand and led him in darkness halfway around the world. When they came to the top of the world, the heavens opened, and he saw the city of Zion shining brightly. Its loveliness was above description. After he woke, he thought of his dream day and night until he recovered. He told his family of the dream, and they all wondered what it meant. When he recovered, he was employed in the butchering trade. His specialty was slaughtering hogs. He could kill, scald, scrape, hang, and draw a hog faster than anyone in the area. In 1849, at age 22, he married Anna Maria Mathis. Their first child, Mary, was born 2 years later. One day at work, he had just hung a hog up when it slipped and struck him in the eye, splitting his pupil. His parents took him to Germany to eye specialists, but they could do nothing for him. His eyesight deteriorated until he was completely blind. And one day, while his wife Marie sat by his bedside, her mother came to visit and told her, "Daughter, all you can do is pray about this. The Lord will open a way for you. I believe the hand of the Lord is in this. A voice has whispered to me, don't feel sorry that Ulrich is blind. It's good for you and your family. You just don't know it yet." Fortunately, Ulrich's family was willing to provide for them, but he was frustrated and felt like the Lord had just cast him aside. 4 long months passed. Then one morning he called his mother and father to him and told them he'd had another dream. He told them, "I found myself in a great dark room with no glimmer of light. Then 3 fires appeared, each of a different size. The same man I saw in my previous dream with the gray beard and peculiar eyes stood at my side. He had an open book in his hand. He crossed out my sins and they fell to the floor." I was then shown the road to Zion. We had to cross the sea with a large group and take a long journey across a great prairie into the mountains to reach the city of Zion. His whole family wondered what this could mean. Surely Ulrich could not immigrate to the United States in his condition. In February 1854, a Mormon missionary by the name of George Meyer came to Zurich from America. George Meyer was very cross-eyed and wore very thick lenses. The Bryners met him and invited him to come to their home, and their home became the missionaries' headquarters in that part of Switzerland. 12 of the Bryner and Mathis family were baptized. Ulrich was the first. After their baptism, the family began to make preparations to join the saints in Zion. They couldn't all go at once, so his brother Caspar and his wife Barbara Ann went first to lead the way. Then 5 more of the family joined them, and they crossed the plains to Utah together. Finally, Ulrich, Marie, and 2 of their children began the trip. They traveled the same route that Ulrich had seen in his dream. They were in a sailing vessel for 42 days, then landed in Boston and traveled to New York to join some saints there. Ulrich's brother Caspar had purchased a wagon and oxen and hired a teamster, so everything was ready for them to go on to Utah. They left about the 1st of September, 1856, and traveled by oxen team was difficult for the pioneers, especially for Ulrich. He could not see. He held onto the back of the wagon, and when the going got tough for the animals, he would help push the wagon. Ulrich clung to the back of the wagon as he stumbled over the rocks, bumps, ruts, and gopher holes, and was sometimes dragged along when he lost his footing. The trip took nearly 4 months, and it got extremely cold. Ulrich and the driver both froze their feet and legs, so Maria had to look after them, do the cooking and the driving. Ulrich was administered to for his frozen feet, and Maria treated them with poultices made of pulverized sage and snow, as advised by Brigham Young. They caught up with the ill-fated Martin Handcart Company and were asked to take another family in their wagon, so they had to leave many of their belongings on the side of the road. The bitterly cold weather made travel very slow, and provisions were scarce. How happy they were to finally reach the Salt Lake Valley. Kind people in the city opened their hearts and their homes to take in the cold and hungry saints that had come across the plains. Ulrich and Marie were later called to settle in St. George in 1861 and traveled 300 miles through snowstorms and lived in a tent. Later they moved to New Harmony. Maria devoted herself to helping her husband. She was very small, but quick and efficient. She spent all day with Ulrich in the fields, guiding him as he did his work, and helping with the farm and the orchard work herself. At the same time, she bore 6 more children and trained them and raised them up in the gospel. Ulrich retired at 70 from his strenuous activity. He hired research to be done in Switzerland, and he and Marie spent the last 7 years of their life in St. George, doing temple work for 5,000 of their kindred dead. Ulrich died at age 78. He left a large posterity and had lived a long and useful life. He always said that he was glad that he had become blind. Otherwise, he might have been too busy to listen to the missionaries. He loved the gospel so much. His joy in it far outweighed the trials or hardships he endured. What an inspiring story. Another great story of a couple's conversion and life's journey is the story of Thomas Samuel Thomas and Mary Jane Anthony Thomas. They both joined the church under trying circumstances, immigrated to America, endured the loss of children to disease, one of whom had a near-death experience that gave them guidance and hope. When Thomas Samuel Thomas was 37 years old, he heard the restored gospel taught by elders from the church. He was a devout Baptist and was not comfortable with this new doctrine and tried to dismiss it in his own mind. Walking down the street one day, while contemplating what he had been taught, a voice came to him saying, "Keep thyself, for thou must yet stand for me." Thomas was overcome by the Spirit and fell to his knees weeping because of the lack of faith that he had had in the past. He pleaded with the Lord for forgiveness. He was baptized in 1851. Mary Jane Anthony was born in 1838. She was 13 when Latter-day Saint missionaries came to her town. She'd heard many tales about the Mormons and thought very poorly of them. One evening she joined with two girlfriends to go throw rocks at the missionaries while they preached on the street. When the girls arrived on the scene, the missionaries were beginning to sing a hymn, and Mary enjoyed singing, so she joined in with the elders as they sang. After the hymns concluded, the missionaries began to pray. As Mary listened to the prayer, she began to feel the spirit of their work. By the end of the prayer, she had let the rocks she had collected drop out of her apron. Her friends were angry with her and encouraged her to pick up the rocks and throw them at the elders. But she said, "No, I can't. I don't see anything wrong with them." From that time on, she attended church meetings regularly. And on a cold December morning in 1845, Mary was baptized, a member of the LDS Church, in an icy river. Mary's parents were angry with her because of her interest in the LDS Church. They tried to prevent her from leaving the house. They locked her in her room, but undeterred, Mary did not give up her faith. Instead, she left her home and her parents to live on a farm with her uncle. Thomas and Mary met each other in 1853 on board the ship Jersey while sailing for America to join the Latter-day Saints in Utah. They were married by the captain during their voyage. They settled in Utah and had their marriage sealed in the Salt Lake Endowment House. They had 6 children. 12 years later, diphtheria broke out among their children. The youngest boy, Samuel, became ill and died in 4 days. Then their son John passed away. A short time later, their oldest boy, Tommy, also contracted the disease. When Tommy was at his lowest point, his parents thought he had passed. But Tommy rallied and regained consciousness, and then told his mother and father that his 2 deceased brothers had come to take him to the spirit world, but he had only gone with them a little ways, then insisted that they let him return to their parents, promising to go with them as soon as they came for him again. Upon hearing this, Mary choked up. With tears streaming down her face, she said, "Well, if it's the Lord's will, we shall have to let you go, but don't let them come for any more of our children." Thomas and Mary were in such despair, they lamented, "They're here. I shall have to go." And then he passed away. Mary was holding him on her lap. After he died, she laid him on the bed. Thomas felt so bad at losing his last and oldest son that he lay on the bed with his boy in his arms and sobbed out his sorrows. 8 days later, another daughter died. Thomas and Mary moved with their remaining 2 children to Idaho. While there, Mary happened to be reunited with her 2 childhood rock-throwing girlfriends. They had both joined the church, married, and settled in Idaho. Thomas and Mary had 2 more children and thrived in Idaho. As their dying son Tommy had revealed to them years earlier, Thomas was first to die in 1873. Mary died in 1920 after raising Alice and her other children to adulthood. As you hear the story of these everyday pioneers and the trials that they went through after sacrificing and consecrating their lives, it can give you pause and make you wonder, is the Lord really there? But he is. He has designed and created this world so that we can come here and experience good and evil, have trials and love and harmony and peace and all the good things. He wants us to have him in our life. He wants us to come to know his voice. I know the Lord loves me, and I know he loves each of you. If any of you doubt that, please put aside the cares of this world and the resentments that you might feel or the frustration with yourself that has put you in hard positions. Ponder the things that are good in your life, the things that you're grateful for. Think about the things you'd like to accomplish with your time on earth. And then go somewhere and quiet your mind and kneel down and verbally say, God, are you there? Do you love me? And I promise you that you will feel his love. You will feel it pour into your heart and your mind, and you will know that God is there. He's aware of you. He loves you. He is your Heavenly Father. I hope you've enjoyed these stories today. Again, if any of you have inspirational stories, please send them to my email. And I would again urge all of you to give Cardio Miracle a try. The next 50 people to order will get a God Loves You, Ask Him t-shirt. You get a lot of great responses as you wear those around town, not just from LDS people, but good Christians as well. Thank you for watching today. You can subscribe here, and if you enjoyed this story, you'll probably enjoy this one. And you can listen to all of Sunshine for the Soul inspirational stories right here. Thank you.